What's happening? Byron, who had been sleeping in the carriage, opened his eyes when the carriage door opened. He assumed it was his subordinate who had opened it, but his eyes widened when he saw that it was an unknown imperial soldier. Who are you? This is a security check. I need to verify your identity, so please show me your ID. Byron, momentarily flustered by the sudden turn of events, nonchalantly pulled a fake ID out of his pocket and handed it to her. I simply hope to get out of this situation safely. Are you left-handed? But things didn't go as expected. The soldier, suspecting that he had presented his identification with his left hand instead of his right, asked him if he was left-handed. What's the point of knowing if I'm left-handed or right-handed? Even in the most desperate circumstances, Byron's arrogant temper was unbreakable. When he questioned him, the nervous soldier instead stuck his sword into Byron's throat and shouted urgently, "Take off your gloves and show me your right hand." By then, Byron couldn't help but realize that this checkpoint was meant to find him. Unable to show his wooden prosthetic arm, he simply stared at the blade around his neck. Phew! Suddenly, the soldier who had been holding a sword to his neck collapsed, spitting blood. The sword stabbed into his back. Sir, you must escape immediately. We'll buy you time, so run as far as possible. It was Cloud. Cloud, unsheathing a sword from the body of a dead soldier, stood at the door of the carriage. Yeah. The carriage I'm traveling in is smaller and lighter than this one, so it will be faster. Let's go there. Cloud grabbed his arm and helped him up. His touch was abrupt, a gesture that belied his master's, but the situation was desperate and he had no other option. What's happening? Capella asked with a puzzled expression as Isla opened the carriage door. We have been detained at a security checkpoint. You must escape quickly, Cloud said urgently. Byron seemed uncomfortable with riding in a small carriage with so many people, but under the circumstances, he sat next to Isla without saying a word. Miss Huh? Isla asked, surprised by the sudden turn of events, and Cloud stared at her for a moment, as if hesitating. Then, as if he had made up his mind, Cloud put a sharp dagger in his hand. If something happens, you must protect the master, Capella, and Laura. The situation was so urgent that he had no choice but to give her the knife, even though he suspected she might know his true identity. If he knew everything, it would be extremely dangerous to give him a weapon. But since she had a gentleman accompanying her to take care of her, it would be fine. Before he could respond, Cloud slammed the carriage door shut and the scenery outside the window began to flash by. It was because they were fleeing at an incredible speed. Isla looked at the dagger in her hand. Byron was sitting right next to him, a gun in his hand. Cloud wasn't there to protect him. Should I kill him? Now. It was a situation where his revenge could end in an instant. But Isla swallowed her murderous intentions as she watched Byron's profile, staring anxiously out the window. Even if Byron died now, there was no guarantee that he would be able to return to his parents. Even if she managed to kill Byron, wouldn't it be the end if she was caught by that knight who was very alert and had his hand on the scabbard? And he can't die that easily. The revenge he craved wasn't just about killing Byron. He wanted to completely trample everything Byron had done and make him feel the desperation and betrayal he felt. He had to endure it now. Catch that carriage. As he suppressed his killing instinct, a commotion was heard outside the carriage. A group of imperial troops were quickly chasing after him. There was no way Cloud had already been hit. It seemed like he belonged to a special unit. Shit. Byron gritted his teeth and spat out harsh words. I will protect him with my life. Don't worry. The gentleman accompanying him spoke in a quite obedient voice, but he failed to calm the frightened Byron. Byron continued to bite his nails with an anxious expression. With a harsh neigh, the carriage stopped. The special forces had already arrived in front of the carriage. At the same time, the carriage door opened and swords flew. In an instant, a knight drew his sword and stopped his attacks. Although not as skilled as Cloud, Byron's knights were quite skilled. They managed to resist. However, the large number of imperial troops made it difficult to avoid defeat. "I will fight too." Then, Isla stood up, wielding her dagger, to leave the carriage. At her words, Byron seemed nervous. But I couldn't seem to tell him not to. It was because the situation was very urgent. "Take care of yourself. I don't want you to get hurt." Byron spoke in a strained voice, apparently worried that his hunting dog might be hurt. "Yes, father." When she stepped off the carriage, clutching her dagger, the imperial soldiers were stunned. They didn't expect such a little girl to join the battle. But it was only a moment. The little girl, who had been underestimated as a child, quickly made her way through the bewildered imperial soldiers, brandishing her dagger. Of course, he had no intention of harming innocents, so he simply hit their vital points with the back of his blunt sword, rendering them incapacitated for battle. "Kill them all and silence them," Byron shouted, as if he had never been so scared. With Isla's arrival, the battle quickly turned in their favor. The battle on Cloud's side had already ended, as Cloud and his men rode towards us. "I don't want to kill them." Isla thought so, and gracefully dodged the sword that flew towards her. He thought he had done it with agility, but the tip of the sword lightly brushed his fur cap, which fell off. He gritted his teeth and stabbed the imperial soldier in the shoulder, avoiding the vital point. The feeling of the blade piercing his skin was unbearable. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." Isla pretended to check on the fallen imperial soldiers and whispered something in his ear. "Play dead, so you can live." He couldn't save everyone, but he wanted to save at least some. He walked among the fallen, whispering the same words in their ears. "Mississippi. Are you okay?" Cloud asked, covered in blood, approaching her. Judging from his upright and powerful posture, he seemed unharmed. The blood that covered him must have belonged to someone else. "I'm fine. There's no injury," Isla said with a shrug. Cloud, with a strange sense of relief, said, "My disciple was stronger than I expected. We have to leave quickly before reinforcements arrive. Get into the carriage. You, the one over there. Make sure all the soldiers there are dead." "Me?" I confirmed it. "They're all dead, so let's go quickly." At Cloud's words, Isla shouted urgently. At his words, Cloud nodded with an unreadable expression. There were no more questions. That was the end. His carriage, which had dyed the pure white of the snowfield red, left the place in a hurry. The incident in which soldiers at a checkpoint set up on a deserted road were wiped out completely disrupted the Palace Empire. This was due to a crucial incident that revealed traces of the traitor, Byron Lionel Vito Pellis, who had not been found a single clue for more than 10 years. Although no one who witnessed it directly has died, a synthesis of the survivors' testimonies leads to one conclusion: it was a fact that Byron, who was rumored to be dead, was alive. The people of the empire trembled with fear. The fact that the heinous traitor, who had unsuccessfully attempted to assassinate his father, was still roaming freely around the empire was so terrifying that parents of young children were forced to forbid them from leaving. Rumors of a tragedy on the snowy plains spread quickly, but not all of them were true. A rumor that did not spread because the survivors kept their mouths shut from above. It was the story of a mysterious girl who found herself in the middle of battle. A beautiful girl with silver hair and blue eyes, like a fairy from the snowy fields. A girl who flew like a dance between men twice her size, disarming the soldiers one by one, and then disappeared after telling them to pretend to be dead if they wanted to live. The one who silenced the survivors who witnessed the girl was none other than Alexia Dexon, a member of the Imperial Guard. The soldiers put padlocks on their mouths at Alexia's words that if the girl was captured by the rebels for some reason, it would be problematic if rumors spread that the girl had saved the lives of the soldiers. Because they shouldn't have put the benefactor who saved their lives in trouble. There was a reason she had told the soldiers, but the more important reason Alexia had kept her mouth shut was because of a request from her friend, the Duke of Weishafen. I really thought Isla was Byron's captive.